In our last lesson, Musical Literacy, we learned how musical notes are marked out by these standard acoustic footsteps which are made within the finite range of notes that our ears can hear and enjoy, the musical range of notes. And for those of us who did the assignment for Guitar Clinic's previous lesson, you would have discovered that such footsteps, acoustically speaking, are measured in Hertz. But that's for the nerds amongst us, like myself. Most of the time, however, musicians don't talk in Hertz. They use another simpler language to visualize the gaps, or what I call the acoustic distance, between those musical notes. And you need to have this knowledge of acoustic distance to be able to appreciate interacting with the design of your musical instrument when you're playing notes. So, welcome to today's lesson. Here's the set of unique musical note names in an ascending order of pitch, or, as we learned in our last lesson, the chromatic scale. Let's start our lesson on acoustic distance by talking about the smallest of the gaps, the one between a note and the note immediately next to it, like the gap between notes B and C. That gap is called a semitone, and it is the smallest acoustic distance in music. It's equivalent to one of those our imaginary footsteps. Because the semitone is the smallest recognized gap in music, musicians do not recognize any other notes between B and C, or between C and C sharp, or between G and G sharp, and so on. Although in theory we've already learned that there are an infinite number of notes between any two consecutive music notes. Let's move on to the next gap, the tone. It's simply twice the size of a semitone. So, two semitones make one tone. Therefore, the distance between notes B and C sharp, which is two notes away, is, that's right, one tone, or two semitones. The last acoustic distance is the octave. An octave is equal to 12 semitones. An interesting thing about the octave is that wherever you are on the chromatic scale, should you choose to move an octave away from it, whether in an ascending order of pitch or in the descending order, you would land on the same note name, except that this new note is an octave higher in pitch, or an octave lower in pitch if you went backwards. Let's try it out. Say you were on the B note. Let's see what would happen if we move an octave upwards. Did you see where we landed on? On a B note. Now this new B note is different from the B note where we started from because it is an octave higher. So, one implication of this octave kinds of jumps is that you only need a single octave of acoustic distance to cover the entire unique names of music notes. In other words, you don't need to start writing a chromatic scale from the A note all the time. You can start from any note, just as long as you cover the rest of the 11 unique note names by moving an octave. This brings us to the end of this lesson. And you know what it's time for? Yes, your assignment. To build your confidence in counting the acoustic distance between musical notes, here's a task for you. First, pick any 2 random notes within a chromatic scale. Try to count the acoustic distance in semitones between those notes, only in your head. Cross-check if your answer in semitones was correct by repeating the counting exercise on paper. If you got it, repeat it 2 more times without fail, consecutively. If you succeed in doing all these, then simply do a victory dance in your living room. All right. In our next lesson, we will be learning about keys, which is the fundamental secret musicians use in putting notes together in a way that makes musical sense.